reiterating the United States' unwavering commitment to NATO. Biden. U.S. President Joe Biden said at a meeting of himself and other NATO leaders this week that he showed the world that the military alliance is more united than ever after Russia's attack on Ukraine. Understand that this war is not about national interests, Biden said at the end of his 5-day European tour in Helsinki, the future of Ukraine. Ukraine's opposition said it was also relevant on July 13. For the sovereignty, security and freedom of all Eastern Europe and the world. At a press conference with Finnish President Sauli Niinistö, Biden reiterated that the United States' commitment to NATO would not change. "I absolutely guarantee it. There is no doubt about it," said Biden, adding that he has support from the American public and members of Congress. Before July 13, Biden and Niinistö met with the leaders of Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. The White House said the administration reaffirms the great power of the United States. Nordic Southern European cooperation and cooperation between countries focusing on security, environment, technology, and people. On the eve of the meeting, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan agreed to send Sweden's request to the Turkish parliament for approval. Sweden wants to become the 32nd member of NATO. Sweden also pledged to strengthen counterterrorism cooperation with Turkey. On April 31, NATO members Sweden and Finland abandoned their military conflict dates after Russia invaded Ukraine last year to unify. Biden praised the successful NATO meeting in Vilnius, Lithuania, where the allies agreed to travel to Ukraine to join the alliance, before his brief stop in the Finnish capital. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky described the outcome of the meeting as a major security victory for Ukraine and said it cleared doubt and confusion over whether Ukraine should join NATO. However, he expressed his disappointment at not receiving an invitation. Biden told reporters on his flight to Helsinki that his journey was to achieve all the goals we set, and that despite Zelensky's frustration, the Ukrainian president was extremely happy. Ukraine will one day join NATO, he told reporters in Helsinki. The question is not whether they join. The important thing is when they can join and whether they will join NATO, Biden said. President Vladimir Putin, hearing the outcome of the meeting on July 13, said that Ukraine's entry into NATO would harm Russia's own security and create more tension on the world stage. Speaking on Russian television, he also said that giving new weapons to Ukraine will not change anything in the war and will only increase the conflict. He added that tanks supplied by Western countries will be a main target for the Russian army. U.S. President Joe Biden promised Wednesday that we will defend every inch of NATO to reassure Eastern European allies and urge Russia to suspend nuclear weapons control of the border region. Biden spoke in Warsaw, the Polish capital, to meet with Eastern European NATO allies, 2 days after he visited Kyiv before the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Amid the most intense tensions between Russia and the West since the Cold War more than 3 years ago, Biden addressed thousands of people in central Warsaw on Tuesday, saying he must stand up against the likes of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Controller. Hours before Putin sent an important tirade blaming themselves for the war in Ukraine. Biden said the West was never ready to attack Russia and that the invasion was Putin's choice. Putin also withdrew from the 2010 New START agreement, which limited Russia and the United States. It is absolutely true. Article 5 is a sacred promise made by the United States. We will defend every inch of NATO, every inch of it. Article 5 states that an attack on a NATO member will be considered an attack on the entire NATO and must be united. They met with Biden. American workers. The U.S. then gathered in Warsaw the leaders of 9 countries, including Poland, Bulgaria and Lithuania, which joined the Western powers after falling under Moscow's control during the Cold War in Bucharest. Most support military aid to Ukraine, and those working in the country group demand additional resources such as air defense. At the meeting, Biden reiterated his commitment to Washington's security. As the eastern part of NATO, you are the front line of our defense group. You know the interests in this conflict better than anyone. Not only for Ukraine, but for the freedom throughout Europe and the world. The Kremlin said it sees NATO, which will soon include Sweden and Finland, as a threat to Russia. Russia is the most important and urgent threat to the security of our allies, the letter said. The declaration was signed by Hungary, which has suspended some EU sanctions against Russia and is the only NATO member, like Turkey, to accept membership applications from Sweden and Finland. Before Wednesday's meeting, Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó called for a non-conflict and peaceful solution in Ukraine to prevent the conflict from turning into a conflict. This is a line many of its neighbors have called for a victory for Ukraine. Conflict. Szijjártó said at a press conference in Budapest, "As I look back and listen to yesterday's speeches from the presidents of the United States and Russia, I think they can do more for people by talking." On Wednesday, the Bucharest Nines, including Hungary, reiterated their support for Ukraine. Ukraine is exercising its legal rights to counter Russian aggression in order to regain full control of its territory. We will support Ukraine's efforts in this direction as long as necessary. The White House said in a statement from the meeting that the United States and the Bucharest Nines reaffirmed their unequivocal support for Ukraine and emphasized their commitment to stand by the Ukrainian people. Leaders look forward to strengthening cooperation and defense cooperation at the NATO meeting to be held in Vilnius in July. Nandita Bose, Alan Charlish, Powell Florowicz, Anna Koper and Andreas Sitas from Warsaw, Robert Mueller and Jason Hovett, Georgi Jakotz from Budapest, authors, Nicholas Pollard, Gladys Fouché, Trevor Honeycutt and Stephen R. Holland, Clist A.S. Erbel. Ukraine has been trying to join NATO since 2002. It shares borders with 4 NATO allies, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and Romania. In September, Zelensky asked for NATO's fast track. Since then, he has visited many European cities to gather support for Kiev's campaign. Zelensky's call was interrupted on the first day of the meeting, when Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced that he had agreed to support Sweden's accession to the NATO alliance. Last May, Sweden and Finland started the NATO application process, which requires the approval of all 30 members of the organization. Finland joined the organization in April. After the meeting, Sweden will become the organization's 32nd member state.